one of the things you might ask yourself is, how in the world do you know if something is true? Now, the first thing I would suggest is that the attitude you guys should bring to this class is that nothing that I tell you is true. Okay, now I don't mean that you should be arrogantly skeptical, because that's not appropriate. But you should bring every critical faculty you have to bear on what I tell you to see if you can chip away at it. Because what you want to do, you want to build yourself a body of knowledge that you cannot undermine. And the way you do that is by trying to undermine it, by hacking away at the foundation with everything you've got. And if the ideas can withstand a total onslaught, then you've got something, you've got a foundation, you've got something you can stand on that's going to be there when things get rough. And so I'm going to tell you what I've found that's been useful to me when things got rough. But I don't expect you to assume that that's going to work for you, and I don't want you to like, I want you to listen and to think, but I want you to, keep your wits about you. Now, I'm going to tell you how I go about trying to determine whether or not something is true. Now, first of all, there's different definitions of truth. And so, we're going to basically flip back and forth between two. One definition of truth is an objective definition. And we don't have to talk much about that, because you guys already know what that is. But there's another definition of truth that I think the best way of defining it is as pragmatically true. And pragmatism is a branch of American philosophy, and it's a very sophisticated branch of philosophy. In fact, I actually think it's the most sophisticated brand of philosophy. Probably because it makes the least claims. And what the pragmatists state, basically, is, well, you don't really know anything, right? You don't have ultimate knowledge about anything. So your knowledge always bottoms out in ignorance. And so then the question is, well, how do you know then if anything is true? And the pragmatists would say, well, in a sense you don't. What you know always is if something is true enough for a particular function. So for example, your theory about getting to the door might be that you can stand up and walk there. And you might, well, God only knows what might happen on the way there, maybe there'll be an earthquake, or a ceiling tile will fall on you, or who knows, maybe you'll have a heart attack, So you don't know whether you can get there. You can infer from past experience. But if you get there, then what you can say is, my statement about truth was sufficient, so that the outcome was what the theory predicted. And so in some sense, what the pragmatists are saying is, every time you make a statement, especially if it's related to action, that you offer a theory of truth along with that statement implicitly, which is that this is true enough if what I predict happens. And so it's a very nice theory, because it doesn't require you to be omniscient about anything for things to be true enough. And you are ignorant, you don't know everything about anything, and so obviously you're working in the world with partial knowledge, and it works, not all the time. You get old, you get sick, you die, you're not gonna work it out thoroughly. But so we're going to use the pragmatic truth framework, and we're going to use an objective truth framework. And one of the propositions that I'm going to make to you is that the stories that are associated with our deepest moral intuitions are pragmatic truths. And that you need pragmatic truths and you need objective truths. And you need pragmatic truths because you don't just need to know what the world's made of. You need to know what to do about the fact that the world's made out of things. And because, human beings are motoric creatures, we act in the world. We act on the world. And so what we need to know is, how is it that you should act on the world? And that is not a question that can be addressed by objective methods. Technically, right? Because it's actually a value question. What should you do? Science, by its very methodology, refuses to answer such questions. And people confuse the fact that science is value-free, sort of, with the idea that existence is value-free. It's like that's philosophically primitive, I would say, because science was actually set up to get rid of the value, of the subjective value, in its technique. So you can't say, well, we set this thing up to get rid of the value, and look, all the value's gone. It's like, there's no value. It's no. You put that domain out of the range of consideration. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just a different, it requires different It requires a different philosophy, a different outlook, different techniques, different tools, different methods of proof, all of these things. And so part of what we're going to do, I'm going to use objective truth as much as I possibly can, because I think that that a lot of what psychology as a science has been able to offer in the last 100 years is actually extraordinarily useful for elucidating some of the issues that we're going to discuss.